supporting Senator Sanders. A few years back, we had a governor elected in Wisconsin by the name of Scott Walker. And you've heard of him, you know what he's about, I can tell by that reaction. But one of the things he did, he went after public sector workers, and he called it dropping the bomb. Now, anytime you want to talk about dropping a bomb on any kind of workers, I'm going to have a problem with it. So we ended up organizing. It started off as a rally 2 days after we heard he was going to pull this act on, which is similar to what happened here in Iowa against the public sector workers. And we had a rally. 250 people showed up on very short notice. We were able to pull that into hundreds of thousands marching around our capital in Wisconsin. And look at today. We see, teachers standing up. Were you there? No, a little young. A little young. But I had my son there. He was 2 years old at the time. Anyways, the only candidate now that showed up to help us at that time is Senator Bernie Sanders. And we were looking for help from everywhere, just trying to get our story out. And Senator Sanders, even though he wasn't running for anything at the time, he still knew that workers needed a voice. So he was able to help amplify what was going on in Wisconsin. And I'll never forget hearing him talk about things like $15 minimum wage, Medicare for all. And at the time, these things seemed a little bit, like, are these things that can really happen? Well, today, looking at the polls, looking at people talking, yes, these are things that we not just deserve, but things that are going to happen when we elect Senator Sanders to be in the White House. Now, after that happened, he decided to run for president, and being an iron worker, I was working on a high-rise in downtown Milwaukee. I was on a 32nd floor. I'll never forget getting this phone call. My phone rang, and it was somebody from the Senator Sanders campaign asking me if I would speak at his presidential rally. And it seemed a little odd to me, like what presidential candidate calls up a construction worker to ask him to speak at a rally? I mean, people in the state knew that, well, depending on who you talk to, if you ask a Republican, they tell you I'm a big mouth. If you ask a Democrat, they'd say I was outspoken. But getting a phone call from a presidential candidate asking me to speak at a rally, it was a big deal. And at the time, I thought I was getting punked. I was like, you want me to speak at your presidential rally? Sure you do. It turned out to be a legit thing. And then what really blew my mind even more so was before they hung up, they were asking, are there any picket lines going on? Any places where workers are being attacked? So I'm like, not only is he asking me, a construction worker, to speak at his rally, but he wants to go walk a picket line. That was incredible. That let me know that this is the man I'm going to support to be the president in 2016, which I did. And so I spoke at his rally. A few years later, because of my outspokenness / big mouth, we have another person by the name of Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, in Wisconsin. It's great to hear you knew him too. So people had asked me to run against him, which I did. And one of the people that I called that I was like, helping amplify a worker's voice was Senator Bernie Sanders. Asked him for help. And he was like, Randy, what could I do to help you? Would it be helpful if I came out to your area, to the district, to talk on your behalf? I was like, well, Senator Sanders, you only won 71 out of 72 counties in our state. It'd be extremely helpful. He came out not once, not twice, 3 times to help us out. I'll be forever grateful for that. For him, a name like Senator Sanders actually believing that a union iron worker could take on the 3rd most powerful Republican in the country. It was huge. But because of him, and then we had a lot of help from Iowa too, which is why I'm grateful to come back and speak to people from Iowa to thank them for helping us chase them out, because the State of the Union speeches every year, there was, the 2 people, the president, and then there was Paul Ryan in the upper right-hand screen of my TV, which his face just drove me nuts. So I would take out my Proud to be a Union Thug t-shirt and drape it up over that corner so I didn't have to look at him. And then we're talking about getting rid of him. Finally, we ended up chasing him away. So it's with great pride that I get to say former Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. Just like we're going to be able to say former President Donald Trump. Now, I could sit here and we could talk labor and about great things that are going on in this country all day, because there has been a lot of doom and gloom in the past. But from what I've seen this last weekend, and the goal is 32,000 doors in Iowa, you know, and this grassroots army is taking place all across the country. And it's a privilege and an honor to be traveling across the country, speaking out on behalf of Senator Sanders. And I'm not going to lie, this time of year, it's okay if you want to send me to California, if anybody's listening. But I just want to let you know that we didn't start this class war, but we will finish it. And I also want to say that it's going to be great to elect somebody like Senator Bernie Sanders to have an organizer-in-chief, because that's exactly what we need to put the move into our movement. Thank you all. Have a great day. Thanks for everything that you're doing to help elect Senator Sanders to be our next president.
Please welcome to the stage local farmer Faith Reeves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Faith Reeves, and I am honored to share today my story and some ideas. I'm a small-scale farmer that works for a fantastic company here in town, the Sky Factory, where we've developed a diverse, small farm that's maturing into a vibrant ecosystem. It's a training ground for me and an educational space for our community. But best of all, I get to grow food for people I care about, my coworkers. I'm fortunate to have been supported and encouraged to learn about regenerative farming practices and how they cultivate healthy soils, plants, and animals. Also, through working with the Bionutrient Food Association, I'm learning how to identify the quality of the food we grow. Without access to high-quality food, we are degenerating into a sick culture. Americans suffer from diseases with direct links to inadequate nutrition. So we need more farmers on board. Our health and the health of our environment depends on it. I want to share some numbers with you. Iowa is made up of 36 million acres. Over 30 million of those acres are currently used for agriculture. Out of those 30+ million acres, 76% of those were planted with corn or soy. But it's estimated that Iowa imports over 90% of our food, even though we rank second in the nation for annual agricultural exports. Why are we importing so much food? Because out of the 30+ million acres that are in the business of agriculture, only 10,455 acres total are planted in vegetables and fruits. Food for actual humans, food for people. Does that strike anyone else as odd? Who can turn this around? Passionate farmers who desire to grow nutritious food and build soil health, backed by a movement of millions of people. Our tall grass prairies are still some of the richest in the world. With the right care of our land, we can feed our communities, regenerate our soils, capture carbon, and leave Iowa better for the next generation. Generations. Bernie Sanders gets it. He understands the urgent need for the solutions to meet the enormity of the challenges we face. He knows that healthy communities require healthy minds, healthy bodies, and a healthy environment. By eliminating tuition, guaranteeing health care for everyone, and enacting a Green New Deal that brings together laborers and farmers to transform the relationship with our planet, we can finally see healthy communities sprout up all over this country. And so, the next speaker is a true friend of farmers, Francis Dickey, which we all love so dearly, and who's really walking the walk. Thanks.
Thank you all for coming here today. I'm Francis Dickey, and I support Bernie Sanders for many reasons, but one came into focus just the other day when the U.S. House of Representatives approved a budget of $738 billion for the military for this year. Now, Senator Sanders has long spoken against this huge military budget and said when he's president, we will not continue to spend $700 billion per year on war. Actually, Bernie Sanders has a long history of standing against war. He actively opposed the war in Vietnam when that was a very unpopular thing to do. I know, because I did too. He voted against the invasion of Iraq, and he's long been calling for redirecting our war budget to important domestic priorities like Medicare for all and a Green New Deal. And Bernie's Green New Deal is the most comprehensive and promising plan put forth. Also, his agriculture platform is the most comprehensive and addresses the important issues of protecting the environment and breaking the stranglehold of agribusiness over farmers and making agriculture more diversified and profitable for family farmers. Just last week, I had the opportunity to help moderate a presidential forum on climate change and regenerative and organic agriculture in Story City, Iowa. All of the presidential candidates were invited. Only one showed up, Bernie Sanders. And at the forum, Bernie made it clear that as president, he will appoint an attorney general that will break up agribusiness monopolies. And he will appoint a real farmer as Secretary of Agriculture, not another agribusiness suit. It reminded me of what Abraham Lincoln said, Abraham Lincoln created the USDA. He said, USDA is the people's department. We need to make it that again. When Bernie heard at the forum how due to agribusiness lobbying, the USDA has been weakening the national organic standards, he promised to restore the strongest possible organic standards and shift the $3 billion USDA annual research budget away from industrial agriculture and towards regenerative agriculture, research and education. So the slogan of Bernie's campaign is not me, us. And you know why that is. Because he doesn't take money from corporate PACs. He knows it's up to us to get him elected. And when we do, he will need us to stay in the fight so that together we can achieve all this vision that he's put forward for us. So now please join me in welcoming our next president of the United States, Bernie Sanders.
It's a lot of people here. Beautiful. Try this one, all right. On this beautiful Vermont afternoon, all right. But you get snow here as well, correct? Yeah. All right, let me thank all of you for being out. Let me thank Menzies for their music. Let me thank Randy Bryce. Now, where's Randy? Randy, where are you? There he is. Now, you don't know this perhaps, but Randy has played a very significant role in contemporary American politics. When Randy announced in 2018 that he was going to run in his congressional district in Wisconsin against Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, you know what happened? Paul Ryan decided not to run. And I think that started a lot of momentum all across this country that enabled Democrats to recapture the House. So Randy, thanks for all you have done and are doing. And I want to thank Faith Reeves and Francis Dickey for all of their work on agriculture. I come, as you know, from Vermont, one of the most rural states in this country. And one of the saddest things that we are dealing with, as you are here in Iowa, as Wisconsin is the decline of family-based agriculture. And we are seeing in our state, and I know you are in your state, people whose families have farmed the land generation after generation, going back to the Revolutionary War in some cases, are now being forced off the land because the prices they're getting for dairy or corn or whatever it may be is just not keeping up with the cost of production. So as Francis said, I'm going to make just a couple of simple promises to you. We will have a Secretary of Agriculture who is a supporter of family-based agriculture, not factory farms. And that secretary will know something about organic agriculture. And we are going to have an attorney general, and this goes beyond agriculture and agribusiness, an attorney general who understands that we cannot continue to have a handful of giant corporations controlling sector after sector after sector, including agriculture, who understands antitrust law and will be breaking up these large conglomerates. I am very often moved by a quote from Nelson Mandela, who was one of the great leaders in modern world history. You'll remember Mandela marched out of jail to become president of South Africa. And what Mandela said, something very profound, he said, quote, "It always seems impossible until it happens." All right, it always seems impossible until it happens. It's a very profound statement. And what it means is that after we change public consciousness to understand injustice, then people say, oh, of course, we're going to do away with apartheid. I mean, how can you have a nation largely black dominated by a minority whites? Oh, of course, it's obvious. Yeah, well, it took decades of struggle to make that happen. 100 years ago today, and this is 100 years ago today, women in America did not have the right to vote. You all know that? 100 years ago, women were defined by the establishment of the time and saying your job is to stay home, have babies, don't even dream of getting a higher education. That's not for you. That's not what women do. A job, you want to be a doctor, are you crazy? That's not what women do. And women struggled to change that consciousness and made it clear that they will not allow anybody else to define who they are. They will define themselves. And that is the history of how change always comes about. I don't want to relate to you the horrific history that we have had regarding race in America, and slavery, and Jim Crow, and segregation, and lynchings, all the horrible things that you know. But it took millions of people, African Americans and their white allies, to finally stand up and say, we are going to do everything we can to fight racism. And then when you think about the labor movement, think back 150 years ago when workers had no rights. Boss says you're going to work 7 days a week, you're working 7 days a week. You don't show up, you're fired. You want more money? You're speaking up about working conditions, you're out of here. Workers had no power. And workers came together and they formed unions and engaged in collective bargaining. If you and I were here in this room 30 years ago, and I told you that gay marriage would be legal in every state in this country, you would not have believed that. But because of the struggles of the gay community and their straight allies, that in fact happened. What is my point? My point is that our opposition is not just Wall Street, enormously powerful insurance companies, drug companies, fossil fuel companies, military industrial complex, prison industrial complex. Those are not our primary forms of opposition. Our major form of opposition is the limitations of our own imagination. Of understanding what injustice is today and where we have to go, all right? Creating a situation where 50 years from now, your kids and grandchildren will look back on you and ask you questions like, I don't believe there was ever a time when everybody in America did not have access to health care. That's crazy. Don't believe it. In other words, we have got to break through what the establishment wants us to believe, whether it's Congress or whether it is the media, and think about the kind of country that we want to become. All right? And what our campaign is about, yeah, I'm here, obviously, to ask for your help to win here in Iowa, and with your help, we will win here in Iowa. All right? But you know what? Other candidates are coming here asking the same thing. All right? I'm not the only one who's asking that. And other candidates are going to come here and say, you know, they want to beat Trump. Believe me, we are going to beat Trump and beat him bad. All right? But I'm not the only candidate who tells you that. Okay? But what I will tell you, which is different than other campaigns, is my very strong belief that no president, no matter how honest and well-intentioned he or she may be, can do it alone. That what we need is an unprecedented grassroots movement, and we are trying to build that successfully, I believe, right here in Iowa right now. And we're doing it all over this country. A movement which says to the corporate elite and the 1% that we are sick and tired of their greed and their corruption, that they cannot have it all, that we will create a government and an economy that works for all of us, not just the 1%. So the message of our campaign is us, not me. Not just because it makes for a great bumper sticker, although it does and we use it, but it is a rather profound statement. What it says is that we are in this together. We reject the Trump vision of what human life is supposed to be about. What Trump and some of his friends believe, that the function of human life is that you lie, you cheat, and you steal, you step on people in order to make as much money as you can. We reject that view of what human life is about. We believe that we are in it together. That when my family is in trouble, you got to be there for us. When your family is in trouble, we have got to be there for you. That we have got to create a nation that works for all of us, not just a few billionaires. And what our campaign is about is literally thinking outside of the box, asking questions that you will not see asked on television, that you will not hear discussed in the United States Congress. And that is, we pride ourselves, we talk about the fact that we are supposed to be a democracy. I don't want to break the bad news to you. We are not a true democracy when a handful of billionaires can spend hundreds of millions of dollars to elect candidates who represent the wealthy and the powerful. That is not the kind of democracy that I believe in. And one of the things, I'm very proud of the campaign that we are running, the great staff we have here, and the great volunteer network that we have here in Iowa. But I'll tell you what I am extraordinarily proud of. And that is, in this campaign, as of today, we have received more than 4 million campaign contributions from over 1.2 million people. That is more contributions from more people than any candidate in the history of the United States of America. And our contributions are coming from teachers, they're coming from Walmart workers, Target workers, they're coming from working class people all across this country, and the average contribution is $18. We don't have a super PAC where billionaires put a whole lot of money in. We don't go to rich people's homes and walk out with a few $100,000. Our campaign is funded by the working people of this country. It is for the working people of this country, and I'm extremely proud of that. So one of our goals is to end a corrupt political system where billionaires buy elections. All right, you got to do that because every issue that we talk about is influenced by big money interest. If Mitch McConnell, a Republican leader in the Senate, were here today, and he's been public about it, he would say it here. He would tell you that we've got to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. This is what McConnell says, and give more tax breaks to the very rich. Now, how does somebody come up with that mentality? You walk down Main Street, talk to anybody in Iowa, anybody in Vermont, and say, hey, you know what we got to do? We got to give more tax breaks to the rich despite massive income and wealth inequality. We got to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. People would think you were crazy. They really would. Nobody believes that, except the people on top, whose greed never ends. All right? So that is the power of big money. And that is something that must be addressed if we are going to retain the democratic traditions that have made this country great. But it's not just a corrupt political system. It's a rigged economy. Now, media doesn't talk about it too often. They are beginning to talk about it a little bit more. We don't talk about it in Congress. But as a nation, we have got to ask ourselves a few simple questions. Are we content to live in a country where 3 people today own more wealth than the bottom half of American society? 3 people. All right? Are we content when the top 1% own more wealth than the bottom 92%? Are we content when in Iowa, you got many, many folks, and in Vermont as well, who are working 2 or 3 jobs while 49% of all new income goes to the top 1%? So this whole issue of income and wealth inequality, which is worse now than at any time since the 1920s, is an issue that we have got to deal with. So under our administration, we are not going to give huge tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires when we got 500,000 people sleeping out on the streets. In fact, we are going to do everything possible to end this high level, grotesque level of income and wealth inequality, and we will make the richest people in this country start paying their fair share of taxes. Now, if we are going to create an economy that works for everybody, economy based on justice, what are some of the things that we have to do? And you all know what they are. It's not radical thinking here. Right now in Iowa and in Washington, we have a federal minimum wage, and a minimum wage here in Iowa, of $7.25 an hour. Does anybody here think that any human being can live with any shred of dignity on $7.25 an hour? Can you live on $8 or $9 or $10 an hour? You can't. So we start with a simple proposal You know, I remember I was in Des Moines a few weeks ago talking to a woman who has 3 kids, working in a fast food place, making $10.25 an hour. She can't make it, all right? So we are going to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. And when we talk about wages, we're going to end the absurdity of women making 70 or 80 cents on the dollar compared to men. Equal pay for equal work. And what we will also do is, at a time when millions of workers in this country want to join unions, we're going to make it easier for workers to join unions through major labor law reform that we have promulgated. When you talk about the future of this country, you got to talk about education. You got to talk about young people. And here's the simple truth. Again, we don't talk about this too much. We treat our children shamefully. That's the simple truth. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. Psychologists tell us what is the obvious truth, that 0 through 4 are the most important years of intellectual and emotional development for a human being. We all know that. And yet we have a child care pre-K system from coast to coast that is wildly dysfunctional. And what that means here in Iowa, and I know it means in Vermont, that if you're a working class person, when mom goes to work, dad goes to work, you are finding it very difficult to get your child into decent quality, affordable childcare. So if we love our children, as I hope we do, we need and will establish high quality, affordable, universal childcare, and we will pay the workers who work with the little kids a living wage. And again, I'm asking people to think outside of the box. When we think about the future of America, you got to be thinking about the young people. You got to think about our educational system. Right now in this country today, we have experienced teachers who may have taught for 10, 20 years, great teachers. They are leaving the profession because they can't make a living. How can it be that in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, we are not paying our teachers a living salary? And in my view, if we're going to attract the best and the brightest into teaching, which is what I would like to see us do, I want kids on college campuses to say, wow, I'm so excited. I'm going to do some of the most important work in America. I'm going to be teaching. Wow, can't wait to begin to do that. But we're going to have to pay our teachers at least $60,000 a year, and we're going to do that by tripling funding for Title I schools and in other ways. And again, what I'm saying is not radical. How does this country do well into the future? How does our democracy thrive if we don't have a strong educational system, and you don't have that system without good teachers? And the other point that I would make is that I believe that every person in this country, regardless of his or her income, has the right to get a higher education. For many, it may be college. For others, it may be learning a trade so they can go out and get a good job. But regardless of what it is, we have got to make public colleges and universities tuition free. And we have got to cancel all student debt in America. And we do that making public colleges and universities tuition-free and canceling student debt by putting a modest tax on Wall Street speculation. You bailed out, against my vote in Congress, you bailed out the crooks on Wall Street 11 years ago. It is time they repaid the American people with a modest tax on speculation. There's another issue that is getting a lot of discussion in this campaign, appropriately so, and that is health care. So let me say a few words on this issue. I have believed for my entire adult life, maybe as a kid as well, that health care is a human right, not a privilege. And that in America, we should do what virtually every other major country on earth does. This is not a radical idea. I didn't wake up in the middle of the night and say, wow, we got to do this. It's what they do throughout Europe, Scandinavia, what they do in Canada. And that is to make sure that every person in our country can go to any doctor they want whenever they need to, can go into the hospital if they have to, and not leave that hospital and go bankrupt. Now, here's what we got right now. I want you all to hear this. You're not going to see this much on TV. Number one, we are currently spending twice as much per capita on healthcare as do the people of any other country. You got that? It's not that we're not spending enough money. We spend double what the Canadians do, more than double what the British do, et cetera, et cetera. We're spending $11,000 every man, woman, and child. Despite that huge expenditure, we today have 87 million people uninsured or underinsured. We have 30,000 people who die each year because they don't get to a doctor when they should. And here is something that is really amazing. And I really just learned about this over the last year. We have some 500,000 people who go bankrupt because of medically related debt. So here is what that means in real terms. It means that somebody walks into a doctor's office, they're sick, they don't feel well. Doctor says, I'm sorry to have to tell you, you have cancer. We're going to have to undergo some pretty radical therapy. And the person is thinking, what doctor do I go to? What treatment do I undertake? What hospital do I go to? But in this country, what they also have got to think is they are a working class person, and this treatment is going to cost them $50,000, $100,000 a year or more. How in God's name are they going to pay it? How do you pay it? How many people have $100,000 in the bank ready to pay out medical bills if an emergency occurs? Many do, but a whole lot do not. So what happens? Think about it. You have $5,000, $10,000 in the bank, you're diagnosed with cancer. What happens to you? Well, for 500,000 Americans, they go bankrupt. Talked to a woman in Pittsburgh just the other day. Actually, she worked at a hospital. She was diagnosed with breast cancer. She ran up a very significant bill. She doesn't make a whole lot of money. She can't pay it off. Her credit scores are now being destroyed. Her interest rates are going up on the loan she takes out. So all I ask of you is to take a step back and think about the dysfunctionality and the cruelty of a system that says you're going bankrupt. For what crime did you commit? Did you go gambling and blow your money? Did you make a risky investment and lose your money? You got sick. You got cancer. That should not be a reason to go bankrupt in the United States of America. So let me tell you, because you're going to hear a whole lot of misinformation. Here's what this debate is about. Last year, the healthcare industry, just the insurance companies and the drug companies alone, made $100 billion in profit. You pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. In some cases, what you pay is 10 times higher than what they pay in Canada or in France or Mexico. Well, Mexico is a whole other story. All right? You pay by far the highest insurance costs in the world. Currently, because of the power of the healthcare industry, the function of healthcare in America is not to provide quality care to everybody. It is to make the drug companies and the insurance companies huge profits and to have their CEOs get, in some cases, tens of millions of dollars a year in compensation. That is what we are up against. So this debate is not that anyone can defend this currently dysfunctional system. It is about whether or not we are ready to take on the greed and corruption of the healthcare industry. And when I talk about corruption, I use that word advisedly. If you do not believe there is massive price fixing going on in the pharmaceutical industry, you don't know what's going on. And the opioid epidemic, where attorneys general all over the country are suing the opioid manufacturers because they knew that the product they were selling, this wasn't ignorance, they knew that it was addictive and killing people. And when they learned about that, you know what they did? They hired more salespersons. All right, we are taking on greed, we are taking on corruption, and as President of the United States, I will be delighted to lead that effort. So what does Medicare for all mean? What does it mean? Well, let me lay it out on you, because as some of you know, I wrote the damn bill. All right. So this is what it means, because it really is simple, and simplicity is actually what we need in the healthcare system right now. What it means is we are going to eliminate premiums in this country, okay? You're not going to be paying premiums anymore. We're going to eliminate co-payments. No co-payments when you go to a doctor. We are going to eliminate an insane concept called deductibles. You all know what deductibles are? And again, I want you to think outside of the box. The function of health insurance, I'm putting my money in, so when I get sick, I go to the doctor. Well, not quite in this system. You got a $10,000 or $1,000 or $5,000 deductible. You got to come up with $5,000 first. Pay that off before you go to the doctor. Well, what happens if you don't have money in your pocket to pay for that doctor's visit? You don't go to the doctor. I mean, that is patently insane. And it is equally insane that 1 out of 5 Americans who walk into a doctor's office and get a prescription are unable to afford to fill that prescription. That's crazy stuff. So what we do is we eliminate all premiums for workers and their employers. We eliminate all co-payments. We eliminate all deductibles. We eliminate all out-of-pocket expenses. And what we also do is understand that Medicare is a strong program, but it needs to be improved. So we believe that dental care is part of health care. So we cover dental care, we cover hearing aids, we cover eyeglasses, and we cover home health care. Now, is health care free? No, it's not. Health care, as you know, very expensive proposition. You got to pay doctors and nurses and all kinds of technology out there. It's expensive. How do we pay for it? Well, we pay for it in a number of ways, but one way of most concern to workers is this is what we do, is we have a 4% tax on income exempting the first $29,000. The median income in America, the family in the middle of our economy, earns about $60,000 a year. Exempting the first $29,000 of income, we charge 4% on $31,000, which is $1,200 a year for comprehensive health care. I think that's a pretty good deal. Now, my opponents attack me every day, and they say, well, how are you going to pay for it? And I just told you partially how we're going to pay for it. We pay for it in other ways as well. But they forget to ask the question, how do we pay for it now? It's not like everybody in America gets free health care. Not quite. So how do we pay for it now? Well, obviously, workers and their employers pay heavy-duty premiums. If you are employed in a company, on average, it's up and it's down, it's about $26,000 a year for you, your contribution, and your employers. The average worker in that $60,000 a year family pays $12,000 a year. $12,000 and you're making $60,000. 20% of your income is going to health care. I think that is grossly unfair. So those people who attack me as to how we're going to pay for it, they got to defend having workers in this country pay $12,000 a year. That's 10 times more than what our proposal is about. Now people say, hey, Bernie, you're expanding Medicare, only $1,200 a year. Hey, I don't believe you. How are you going to be able to do this? Well, I'll tell you how we do it. Number one, we drive down the cost of prescription drugs to what they are in other countries around the world. And without going into all the details, Medicare will negotiate and all that other stuff. That's what we do. So you save a whole lot of money doing that. Second of all, if I went around this room right now, there would be probably dozens of separate plans that people have. You have a $5,000 deductible, you have a $10,000 deductible. You're in this network, you're in that network. You're eligible for this drug, you're not eligible for that drug. And you have a system where you have thousands of separate plans. It is enormously complicated to administer. You know, people walk into the doctor's office, they walk into the hospital, you know, all these kind of people say, all right, fill out the 28 forms that you got to fill out. And, you know, and then, by the way, after you fill out all the forms and you get your bill, you find out you thought you were covered and you really weren't covered in the first place, right? All right, so, you know, the function of insurance companies is not to pay you. They make more money the less they pay out. That's the function. So we eliminate the many hundreds of billions of dollars in administrative costs that it takes to run the current system. And what we say is the Canadians do, and people in every other country. You walk into the doctor's office, you take out your card, that's it. That's the whole transaction. Because you're an American, you get health care as a right. Far, far, far easier to administer. We save hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, which goes into health care, not into profiteering and bureaucracy. That is what Medicare for All is about. Now, there's another issue out there, and I have become increasingly concerned about it. And that is, you know, I disagree with Donald Trump on virtually everything. That goes without saying. But there is one area where his policies are not only harmful to the people of this country, but to the entire world. And that is his belief that climate change is a hoax. All right? So what I want to tell you is that what the scientists are now saying is not only that climate change, of course, is real, that it is caused by carbon emissions and human activity, that it is already causing devastating problems, but what the scientists are now telling us is they underestimated the severity of what climate change is doing and the speed in which it is moving. You know, when you look at climate, the climatologists look at millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years. And what is really scary, we are seeing changes with our own eyes in our own lifetime. And if those changes continue, if the earth warms up by the end of the century, as people expect it might if we don't act decisively, 7 degrees Fahrenheit, wow, think about what this planet looks like at the end of the century for our kids and our grandchildren. So, to my mind, what we have got to do is in a very aggressive way address this issue of climate change. And I am proud to tell you that we have introduced the most comprehensive climate change plan ever introduced by any candidate for federal office. Now, my opponents will say, oh, Bernie, it's very expensive. They're right. It is very expensive, although we pay for it. But I want you all to think about how much is too much when we are fighting for the future of this planet and the well-being of future generations. So, and I don't think you put a price tag on that. I want my 7 grandchildren to grow up in a country which is healthy and habitable, not one where we're seeing more extreme weather disturbances, where coastal communities in this country and around the world are underwater, where drought is impacting Iowa in terms of food production, of shorter planting seasons, where we are looking at hundreds of millions of climate refugees, according to the United Nations, where our oceans are becoming warmer and acidified, killing off all kinds of species of fish, denying protein to people all over the world. So we got a big, big problem. And it becomes more complicated because it's not just an American issue. We could do the right thing tomorrow. But you got China and Russia and India and Pakistan and Brazil. You got countries all over the world. So my promise to you as president is I will do everything I can to lead the people of this world into understanding that maybe, just maybe, instead of spending $1.8 trillion a year on weapons of destruction designed to kill each other, we should pool our resources and fight our common enemy, which is climate change. But this is, I got to tell you, anybody who tells you that climate change is not real, it's hard for me to understand their willingness to sacrifice the well-being of their own children and their grandchildren. I really don't get it. I really don't get it. So this is a tough issue, but it is an issue that we cannot run away from. And instead of having leadership in Washington denying the reality, we're going to have leadership which moves the entire world forward in a direction that we've got to be going. When we look at a progressive agenda, it means to me that we have got to deal with a criminal justice system which is not only broken, but it is racist. We got to deal with that. In the wealthiest country in the history of the world, we should not be having more people in jail than any other country on earth. Disproportionately African American, Latino, Native American. What our administration will do is invest in jobs and education for our young people, not more jails and incarceration. We will end private prisons and detention centers because corporations should not be making money by locking up fellow Americans. And I will tell you something else that we will do. Some of you may not agree with it. But we are going to end the so-called war on drugs and legalize marijuana in every state in the country. Can I ask you a question? I'd be curious to know the answer. How many people in this room know of someone who was arrested for possession of marijuana? Please raise your hand. Look around you. Look around you. This is not a college campus. All right? That's why we're going to expunge the records of those people arrested for possession of marijuana. And because I do not want to see a handful of large corporations controlling legalized marijuana, we're going to help minority communities who have been hit hardest by the war on drugs get the businesses they need to make a living out of the legalization of marijuana. Donald Trump believes he's going to win re-election by dividing us up based on the color of our skin, where we were born, our religion, our sexual orientation, agenda. And the people he's been going after the most are undocumented immigrants in this country. We are going to end the demonization of undocumented people. We're going to move to comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship. And we're going to have a border policy which will never allow federal agents to be tearing babies from the arms of their mothers. And on day one, we will have an executive order to reestablish the legal status of the 1.8 million young people eligible for the DACA program. Every person in this room and in our country gets horrified every time we turn on the TV and we see another instance of a mass shooting. And I'll tell you something, it is not only the 40,000 people a year who die as a result of gun wounds, it is also the fact that we have children all over this country, including my own grandchildren in New Hampshire, who are constantly having these, what they call shooter drills, where they have to learn with their teachers how to respond if somebody enters the building. Think about what this means. Think about the trauma that kids throughout this country are experiencing. I was in Iowa a number of months ago, and this big kid, he looked to me like a football player, 6'2" or so, and he got up there and he said, "Senator, I got to tell you that the kids in my school are really frightened by this issue." Talked to a woman in New Hampshire, said, "What am I supposed to tell my daughter who asked me to get her for Christmas a bulletproof backpack?" All right? This is, kids are traumatized. They are scared. We want kids to go to school, to learn, to socialize, to be happy. And so many of these kids are going to school frightened. So there is no magical cure here, but I will tell you this. Our gun policy will not be dictated by the NRA. It will be dictated by the American people. And that means expanded and universal background checks. It means doing away with the gun show loophole. It means doing away with the so-called straw man provision, which allows people to legally buy guns and then sell them to criminals. And it also means ending the sale and distribution of assault weapons in this country. Now, I'm a United States Senator, and I get on the floor of the Senate, and I hear quite often my conservative colleagues talk about their mantra of small government and getting government off the backs of the American people. So I say to those so-called conservatives, if you believe in getting the government off the backs of the American people, understand that it is women, not the government, who should be controlling their own bodies. And my promise to you is that I will never nominate somebody to the U.S. Supreme Court who is not 100% pro Roe v. Wade. So let me conclude, and we'll open it up to your questions and comments. Let me conclude by saying this. I'm a senator. I know a little bit about what goes on in Washington. I know the power of the corporate elite. I see it in action every day. I know the power of Wall Street, where 6 banks have assets equivalent to half of the GDP of America, over $10 trillion controlled by 6 banks. I know the power of the pharmaceutical industry, who spent $4 billion over the last 20 years in lobbying and campaign contributions to Republicans and Democrats so that they can charge you any price they want for the medicine you need. I know the power of the insurance companies who are now putting ads on Iowa television telling you how terrible Medicare for All is so they can continue to make huge profits and get their CEOs huge compensation packages. I know the power of the military-industrial complex, which has helped get us into endless wars at a cost of trillions of dollars, who are selling sophisticated military weapons to dictatorships all over the world. I know their power. I know the power of the fossil fuel industry, which learned years ago, decades ago, that the product that they are producing is destroying the planet. And instead of telling the truth, they lied and put large sums of money into obfuscating the issue surrounding climate change. I know the power of the 1%. These are enormously powerful people with endless amounts of money, and I cannot emphasize that point enough. Everybody in this room, I grew up in a working class family. We struggled. And we always carry with us, well, money, I can't, if I spend here, I can't spend there, I got this much money. That's not their world. They can spend and spend and spend. They have endless amounts of money, and they will use it to protect their profits and their greed. I know that. I deal with them. But this is what I also believe, that while the 1% has enormous power, they are just 1%. And if the rest of us do not get divided up by Trump and his friends based on the color of our skin or where we were born or our sexual orientation or our religion, if we are prepared to stand together and fight for justice, we can not only defeat Trump, we can, in fact, transform this country. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. We don't believe in standing ovations. That's all. Sit down. Everybody relax. Okay. We're going to move down the road here, but I wanted to take some questions or comments. I see a woman, Misty, I see a woman in blue over there.
Senator Sanders, thank you for coming to Fairfield. We really love having you here. Could you please talk about why the message Medicare for all who want it isn't going to work?
It's not going to work for two reasons. Number one, and most importantly, it leaves in place a healthcare system designed to make huge profits for the insurance companies and the drug companies. It doesn't touch that. And we ultimately can never have a cost-effective healthcare system when the drug companies and the insurance companies are making huge profits and determining the priorities of our healthcare system. The insurance companies and the drug companies are not particularly interested in disease prevention. They got other goals as well. They're not particularly interested in making sure we have hospitals and doctors in rural areas. They don't make enough money doing that. So the only way we are going to provide health care for all is finally do what presidents have been talking about for well over 100 years. Think about what Teddy Roosevelt said, what FDR said, what Harry Truman said, what JFK said, what Lyndon Johnson said, what Obama said. Health care has got to be available to all of our people. And you cannot do that in an affordable way unless you have the courage to finally take on the drug companies and the insurance companies. Second of all, if you go that route, what you'll end up with a two-tier Medicare system. The healthy and the wealthy will go into private insurance, the poor and the sick will go into Medicare, and that will be a disaster for Medicare in terms of the costs. What we need is one system which guarantees health care to all of our people, and the only way we do that is, in my view, through Medicare for all. Okay, we got a woman right up here, front and center. And why don't you stand up, give us your name, please.
Thank you for coming. I just had a quick question about.
Hold on, mic closely. Turn around, I can hear you.
Hi, I'm actually not an Iowan. I don't have kids. I have no reason to care about the environment or income or all that. But I do because it's the right thing to do, and this is the only man that's doing this for us. So, okay, so my question to you is, you mentioned most of the hot topics that you discussed, but you didn't talk about the issue we have with the Electoral College and how we keep electing Democrats and they keep losing. So please address that.
Well, we could have gone into that and many other issues. I would have kept you here 5 hours. You don't want to do that. I would lose everybody's vote. So, look, you raise an obvious issue. And when I talk about a corrupt political system, this is one example of that. In case you don't know, Donald Trump lost the general election popular vote by 3 million votes. It's a lot of votes. In case you also don't know, Donald Trump is the president of the United States. So how do you lose an election by 3 million votes and end up being president? Because it's the Electoral College. And in fact, what is really a problem is not only that, which is obviously a major problem, is that this coming election, sad to say, will be probably centered around 15, 16 states in this country, the so-called battleground states. Vermont is not going to vote for Trump. California is not going to vote for Trump. Wyoming is in all likelihood not going to vote for a Democrat, nor will South Dakota. So all of those states which are strongly Democrat or strongly Republican, they're not going to be paid attention to. Iowa will be paid attention to. Wisconsin will be paid attention to. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Florida, battleground states will be paid attention to. That's not fair either. You know, California has its issues. New York, Vermont, we have our issues. We should have a presidential election where the concerns of all 50 states are being discussed. That doesn't exist. So to answer your question, this is an issue that has got to be dealt with. There are a number of ways to do that. But I am old-fashioned and conservative enough to believe the majority should win. And you shouldn't be elected president when you lose by 3 million votes. Okay. Okay, I see a hand right here. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Sally Moberg. I'm from Fairfield, and Senator Sanders, you have given me hope. A question that I have that is so concerning to me and I haven't heard it addressed, in my health challenges over these years, I've spent my $80,000 of savings, and most of my Social Security goes on to natural supplements, treatments, everything I can find that is going to heal my body and not just keep it drugged. Okay, so I'm concerned, wanting to be well again and willing to do what it takes, but nobody's covering me with all the treatments I'm doing.
Thank you very much for that question. You raise a very important issue. It seems to me that we have a lot to learn from Eastern medicine as well, okay? And when I was chairman of the U.S. Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, I worked very hard with some modest success in making sure that the veterans of this country within the VA have access to acupuncture, to nutrition education, to massage therapy, to a variety of therapies that sometimes don't exist in the average doctor's office. So I think that, you know, when we talk about healthcare, and I'm going to be talking about this issue more, got a little bit more research into it, but it goes without saying, what Medicare for All says, you have the right not to spend $80,000, but to get the healthcare that you need. But it also says that we have got to do a better job on disease prevention, and we have got to keeping people healthy, and that means working better on nutrition in this country, making sure that our young people are eating healthy food, organic when possible, locally grown when possible. But it also means, you know, when you look at in China and you see people undergoing surgery without any drugs, but just through acupuncture. I don't know if you've ever seen that on YouTube. And the person who's in surgery is talking to the doctor. I mean, it's unbelievable. Those are things we have got. There are a lot of mysteries out there that Western medicine and the pharmaceutical industry do not know about. And one of the things we are trying to do within the VA is work aggressively to get veterans off of drugs which are really hurting them. So we've cut back on that. You know, it's complicated and there are always exceptions to the rule. But I hear what you're saying. We don't want to be a society just dependent upon the pharmaceutical industry to get us off, which is not to say that, you know, there are a lot of great medicines out there that are saving lives that we need. But I think we need to be kind of thinking more broadly when we talk about healthcare. So thank you very much for that question. And you'll hear more about that. Okay, I think we got a question right here.
I grew up in the 60s and the 70s. I don't have a problem with pot, but there's still...
Hold up, Michael.
There's still cocaine, meth, and the drugs that the cartels are working with. We can't just drop that. What's the plan for that?
I mean, combating those type of drugs?
Yes.
Well, we will. No, I didn't talk about legalizing all drugs. I talked about making marijuana legal.
I understood that.
Okay. Well, you know...
But you said the war on drugs.
That's right. Well, we're going to end the war on drugs. We're not going to be arresting people for smoking marijuana. But I know, and you know, I think what you're telling me is heroin kills people. All right? Cocaine is a very nasty, destructive type of drug. And we've got to do a better job than we are doing right now. I wish I could tell you that I had a magical solution, but don't hear me to say that I am talking about legalizing heroin or cocaine. I am absolutely not. Okay. Okay, other questions? Okay, we have a gentleman right here.
Hi, I appreciate your position on DACA. My big concern is we've used like a lot of the registration of DACA that ICE has been able to use all that information to round people up under this present president. So how do we get undocumented immigrants to trust going back into the DACA system again?
Elect me president, and I think there will be trust. And your point is well taken. What he's all saying is people register for DACA. The agencies have their names and their addresses, and then Trump, you know, ends DACA, and there they are. And many of them are very, very nervous. I think the best that I can do is we are working very, very hard with the undocumented community to restore trust, the trust that will be needed to go forward. Okay. Oh, we got some back here. Okay, yes, right here. Hi.
Hi, first I just, I'll be sure to give it back. I just wanted to say thank you for coming and speaking today, first and foremost. Secondly, I guess my question is kind of complex. You mentioned a lot about expanding social services, restructuring how we spend tax in this country. Firstly, I was wondering, do you plan on restructuring tax brackets to accommodate that? And second of all, for example, I've looked at a tax breakdown from 2016 before deficit spending and whatnot has always been sort of a subject of interest for me. I believe that it said that 80% of tax money that is collected from income tax revenue goes to overhead spending. Do you plan on cutting that?
Okay, I'm not quite sure I got all of it, but this is what I do know. Over the last many years, we have seen a tax system which has become more and more regressive. And right now, unbelievably, the average middle-class person is paying a higher percentage of his or her income than the richest 400 people in this country who are all billionaires, okay? You have companies like Amazon made $11 billion last year. Do you know how much they're paying in taxes this year? 0. And other companies are in the same boat. So if we are going to build the homes that we need to deal with homelessness and affordable housing, if we're going to be able to pay our teachers a living salary, if we're going to be able to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. Costs a lot of money to do those things. And at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, when in the last 30 years, the top 1% have seen a $21 trillion increase in their wealth. You got that? $21 trillion. Bottom half of America seen a decline in their wealth. We are going to ask big time the top 1% and the largest corporations in this country to start paying their fair share of taxes. Okay, question right here. Here. Mister, you got a mic for the gentleman? We got to get going? Okay.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. First, I wanted to thank you for your lifelong service to the country. That's really inspirational. One of the things that concerns me the most is that for a vibrant democracy, you need informed citizenry.
Yep.
And as newspapers around the country have been folding for decades, and companies can profiteer from selling ads that we know are false, how can we inform people when we know that they're believing lies?
Well, it's not just Fox. I don't think that's what you meant. It's an internet. Right. All right, you raised a huge issue of enormous consequence. And I think, I was just reading somebody told me something, that a good number of kids in school really are unable to distinguish a lie from the truth. So obviously, and you've raised an issue, it's a very big issue, but it's an enormously important issue. It goes to what goes on the internet right now. And without giving you a detailed prescription, you've raised an important issue that we have to deal with. I want to have a media in this country, I want to have an internet in this country where we can disagree. But I don't want to see our politics permeated with lies. And sad to say, it is the President of the United States who is leading that effort. And again, I say this, I have friends who are conservatives, who are not necessarily liars. They're not racist, But you got a president who every day lies and lies and lies, and then other people pick up from him. They say, hey, Trump is president, he can lie, I can lie too, okay? And then we develop that culture of lies, and that is very, very disturbing. So it would take me too long, and I don't have all the answers in front of me, but you raised an enormously important point. We want, in a democracy, to respect other people's points of view. But we want to argue facts and not argue about lies. And believe me, when you run for president, you learn about lies thrown against you. You see that every day. All right, I got to run. I apologize. We're going to get down the road or we're going to be late. I just want to thank all of you very much for coming out today. Thank you.